Welcome to the Beyond Atheism podcast with me, Nathan Alexander, and my co-host, Todd Tavares. Moving beyond questions of God's existence, this podcast asks what atheists should be doing next in a godless world.
This morning, you and I did this. We watched the beginning of Casino Royale, the Bond film, the sort of like Bond reboot.
Yep.
And it was fantastic because when they introduced the villain, Le Chiffre, that guy, it's so cool because it is some of the laziest, jankiest, generic villain building you can imagine, right? This guy shows up to meet these warlords, driving a Land Rover. He gets out, dressed in black, wearing black, checks that box. What was the next thing he did? Oh, he's got the scar, right?
He's got the scar,
Villains,
but then...
He's got the scar, he's got the accent.
And he's got an inhaler, too.
An inhaler, right?
Just
right?
because,
those asthmatics. Oh, they're always scheming.
Well, they need some motivation, for evil, I guess, and that's
why, right? That's why he's angry at the world. He's got this small scar over his eye, and he needs an inhaler, and he's got this like vaguely, like just other sort of accent. Like it's not English, it's not American. He's got this accent.
Yeah.
But then the first thing anyone says to him, and this is what's brilliant about it, is the first thing they say to him is, "Do you believe in God?" And his answer is no. Like that's it. That's your introduction to the character.
Or he says like, "I believe in return on investment" or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yes, I believe in a great rate of return or whatever.
Right,
yeah, he just cares about the money.
Yeah, which is, I think that's pretty common conversation, like when you're negotiating with a terrorist, like, just
of course.
Metaphysical sort of issues like that.
Totally. When I meet anyone from a different culture, and I'm trying to do business with them, that's the first thing that comes up is, do you believe in God? Because I want to do this. Not, what are you going to do with my literal crates of money?
Right.
Or how am I going to buy guns? It's do you believe in God? And what this immediately kicked off in me, this idea of like, well, wait a minute. I know how I see myself as an atheist. And I know how I see other atheists. But what this is telling us is that atheists are villains, right? Asthmatics are angry at the world, don't trust people who dress in black or have scars, lumping in atheists with villains.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can see the producers. It's like, well, we've got the scar, we've got the asthma, like the all black, the sort of questionable accent. Like, can we make it any more subtle, like more less subtle for the viewers?
Right, dude. And you know what I just thought of is that normally there wasn't a puppy around for him to kick.
Right.
But like, you can't have smoking in movies now, right? So instead of smoking, you use the inhaler.
That's true. Yeah. Right. Yes. Which, I mean, I don't know. It's strange. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're smoking, it's like you're throwing, like you don't care about your health or something like that, or
maybe
like
that's how he got asthma. Years of smoking left him with asthma.
Yeah, but it's almost like, I don't know, like if you're smoking, it's like, I know this is bad for my health, but it looks really cool. Whereas like with the asthma, it's like, I've got to take this inhaler, which sort of looks a bit silly, but like, hey, I gotta look out for my health.
Right.
So,
well, that's the thing. He's being proactive about his health at the very least.
Yeah. No, that's important. Yeah.
But not praying, apparently. There's no prayer involved. But this is sort of how other people see atheists. And there is, so like you and I, and presumably people listening, we don't see this about one another. We don't project that onto each other. We think we're
No.
good, decent people, but we know like that there are these implicit biases, and there's a place we can see it. And I hope I'm not giving too much away about personal lives here, Nathan. I don't want to disturb this, but I'm
Right.
I'm going to tell the audience that Nathan lives in a location that I
Yeah.
like to call the other side of the American Canadian border.
Yes.
Which
Yeah,
is that true? Is that where you're located?
it's true. I'm in a well, I'm in a foreign country, depending which country you're in.
That's a good way to put it. I think
Yes.
that's always true. So yeah, we do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
This is an international podcast, basically.
Yep.
So I know that you aren't necessarily familiar with all things American, but
No.
in the U.S. we do have things are different here.
Yeah.
We use miles and pounds. Apparently ounces. I still haven't figured those out. But politically, we have a bicameral system with the House of Representatives and a Senate. And the way the Senate works is you get two people from every state, 50 states, 100 people. And the
Yes.
nice thing about this is the numbers work out fantastically. So
Hmm.
it kind of gives us these, we can think about it in terms of percentages, right?
Yep.
So out of, it's almost like we can do it like Family Feud style, right? So out of the 100 senators,
Right.
Nathan, this
Yes.
is me testing you about America. The
Okay.
United States is somewhere about 70% white. Out of 100 U.S. senators, how many are white?
Hmm. Um. Wow. I'm gonna guess. Geez. I'm gonna guess 90.
Hey, that's pretty good. It's 89,
Oh wow.
right?
Nice.
So it's a little overrepresented.
Hmm.
Um, the uh, the male female balance in the U.S. about 50-50.
Hmm.
What is it in the Senate? How many U.S. senators are women?
I'm gonna I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 25.
Oh wow, you could be American. You're probably doing better than most Americans right now.
Oh, what?
24.
Wow. Geez.
24. Yeah,
Wow.
so you are nailing it. Now, how about this one? The number of left-handed senators. And in the general population, it's about 10%. About 10% are
Yeah.
left-handed. How many in the U.S. Senate?
I'm gonna take a random guess and say that left-handed people are overrepresented, and I'm
Ooh,
gonna say there are 20 senators.
20.
Yes.
Double. That would
Yes.
be amazing. It's
Yeah.
13,
Okay. Well, they're still
right?
overrepresented
Oh,
anyway.
still overrepresented, but very
Yeah.
like sensible amount. It's weird. I'm not really
Hmm.
sure how that would work out, but slightly there. How many now for the important one, Nathan?
Right.
Um, how many are atheist, agnostic, or openly nuns, meaning no religious affiliation? How many U.S. senators in a country where the population is now about 20 to 25%,
Right.
no religious affiliation? How many are openly none?
I'm gonna say. Well, I wonder about Bernie Sanders. Like, I wonder if he counts as one. I mean, I think he does, right? I mean, I'm not.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not trying to get the answer, but anyway,
I don't
I'm
know.
gonna say I'm thinking Bernie Sanders is one, and then I'm gonna say maybe there are two more, so three in total.
I looked it up. It's just one. There's
Oh,
one
okay.
who is
Who, do you
openly
know who that
none.
is?
Doesn't matter. That's not the important thing. Because the
Mhm.
important thing is we're not thinking about it in terms of being an individual. Now we're thinking about it
Mhm.
in terms of the main topic today. We're thinking about it in terms of identity, right? These, if we're
Mhm.
thinking about identity politics, we're thinking about group politics. And here we have where we see gender, huge disparities. You have racial disparities, class, sexuality are things that you can't didn't even begin to get into. There are other things that we would expect, but nuns are represented about what, like 4%, 5% of what you would expect. Um,
Hmm.
and this brings us to identity politics specifically for atheists and how we should
Hmm.
fall into that, right? How we should think about that. So, like, this is one example, but Nathan, what? So when we're thinking about identity politics, where I don't know where to begin. How do you think about, how do you conceptualize identity politics? And as an atheist, what is our responsibility in this case to go beyond atheism?
Yeah. I sort of feel like, well, it's hard to come up with a definition because I sort of feel like it's almost like a negative thing that you use about other people's politics when you say, so and so is just playing identity politics. And what you really mean is sort of like, I don't like the politics that uh, they're
Right?
putting forward or whatever. But I think so. I think that's sort of an important sort of point, I guess, that like it does have a definition, I suppose, but there's also that like element of it's a negative term to use against someone else. And
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean that pejorative
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
I
Right.
think. I mean, so this is one I tried to kind of boil down and encapsulate. It's kind of this idea of um, when you have people who are voting or behaving or promoting ideas, beliefs, or practices that are based on group membership and identity rather than personal belief or platforms, right? So things like nepotism, it would kind of be like identity politics,
Hmm.
promoting people who are of your ethnic group,
Right.
that sort of
Right.
thing. Or like, to pick a contemporary example, like we are not surprised to see that President Joe Biden's cabinet is, there's a lot of Catholics in there. It's really shocking,
Hmm.
right? So choosing people from your group rather than based on merit. And yeah, that's definitely one way that it's thought about. And we can think about what that means as atheists. The
Hmm.
other one, this comes from Francis Fukuyama, who's also against it, but he put it as identity politics describes when people adopt political positions based on their ethnicity, race, sexuality, or religion rather than on broader policies, right? So, kind
Hmm.
of like going with the group, sort of this group interest, a particular interest, almost like a special interest,
Hmm.
rather than what we might imagine as the general will or the collective good, right?
Right. Right.
So I don't know, where do you come down on those? Do you think
Hmm.
that like Fukuyama's idea, if we use that one, which I think is
Hmm.
a little more accurate and more specific, I
Right.
mean, is that, are we right to go to find that as a bad thing?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm inclined to say yes, I guess. I mean, I think the thing is like policies shouldn't be like a zero sum sort of
Mm,
outcome where it's like,
mm,
the like this policy will either benefit my group or it's going to benefit another group. And so I
right.
want it to benefit my group. I think in that case, I think that would be a bad way of doing it. But then I don't think policies are necessarily zero sum like that. I think we could
Mm,
probably choose policies that like, benefit everyone. But I think it's like, and I think sort of
yes.
a
Mm,
positive kind of thing would be like something like I don't know, like separation of church and state. I suppose like atheists and religious minorities probably would support that more, like because they're benefited disproportionately by it. But I don't think it's like it doesn't take away, it doesn't harm like the majority necessarily.
totally. Right. Yeah, I get, and I think this is where other people are on it, right?
Hmm.
How do we do things that benefit everyone without harming other people, right?
Hmm.
And we see identity as an obstacle to that. And like when this first came up, I was totally on board with your idea of this, right? We need
Mhm.
things that aren't zero sum. We need
Mhm.
to work together, find a common ground and collective good. That's how we do it. And then you know what I think now, and this is kind of weird.
Uh-huh.
I think everything is identity politics. I think
Uh-huh.
people who
All right.
complain about identity politics are bullshit because they're
Right.
identity politics. Like
Yeah.
going through it, like every time I see any story,
Mhm.
everything, every part of it is like part of someone's identity. So even
Mhm.
I'm sure you recognized it. You've heard about it here. President Trump just acquitted in his impeachment trial again,
Yeah. Right. Yes.
and you have immediately after it happens, you have a Republican senator get up and say, "Oh yeah, he was guilty as hell. He did that."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I just voted to acquit him.
Right.
And one of the people who, to me from Pennsylvania, who voted guilty,
Right. That's a
a
Republican, right?
Republican,
Yeah.
yeah, the Republican Party came up and said, "We literally we didn't send you to Washington to do the right thing. It's to act
Mm.
in behalf of our interests, because their interests are the party's interests." So I think that we always get, especially in a system we have that says the individual is supreme, you need to act on your self interest. And the way to maximize your self interest is to get other like minded individuals together to do it, to get a
Mhm.
majority and
Mhm.
get political power. I think we're always going to face this. So, Nathan, I've got a way, I think I can show some of the ways we run into these obstacles.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's through some thought experiments.
Okay.
And I'm going to let you right now that they say more about me, came up
Uh-huh.
with them, than they say
Okay.
about you and your answer. There's no wrong answer. I'll just
Okay.
set it up, and
Okay.
you just need to, when you give an answer, right, you'll have a choice between two policy outcomes.
Okay.
Just explain which outcome you want and why. So, like, what are your assumptions, the reason, the logic behind it? What are you hoping is the outcome? Things like that. There's no wrong answer.
Mhm. Okay.
But if people feel that there is, they should know that you are. If there's a problem with this podcast, reach out to Nathan Alexander on Twitter. They'll all be taken care of. Okay.
Yeah. If there is a wrong answer and I
There
say it,
is,
then let me
exactly.
know.
If he does manage to make a wrong answer, yep, that's how you can reach him. And so this first one is about overcoming the education gap for Black Americans. There's an achievement
Mm.
gap, right?
Mhm.
We know that about 50% of white Americans can continue on to college. Black Americans much lower, about a third.
Mhm.
So to overcome this gap, I mean, our goal is to get Black Americans more college degrees.
Mhm.
Which solution would you choose and why? Number one, free university for all Black Americans whose parents attended university.
Oh,
Or
okay.
number two, free university for all Americans whose parents did not attend university. What's your answer and why? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not watching the video, Nathan Alexander is a Canadian, but also a race scholar. You're a critical race scholar. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if I'm a critical. I mean, I guess I did my PhD was about the history of racism among. I mean, like more narrow than that, but yeah.
And we realize, like this is nested in this idea of identity politics.
Hmm.
But which one, especially in light of the way we discuss identity politics, which would you
Right.
choose and why?
Hmm. I mean, it's interesting the way you. So the two choices are just to kind of drag it out as to give me myself
Yeah,
time to think.
yeah.
The two
Mhm.
choices are so free university and college for the children of parents who
Who
African
attended
American
university? Yes,
African American parents who attended university
that's right.
versus free university and college for all people who with parents who didn't attend university.
Exactly. Yeah,
And the goal is just to increase the number of African Americans who get college degrees.
yeah.
Hmm. I
So there's
mean,
something
oh,
weird about this, right?
uh
There's something very strange.
yes.
Why is this so difficult?
Well, I mean, This is not again to delay answering, but like I guess I could challenge the premise and
Sure.
say
Well, you can't pick a different policy though. The thing you can
okay,
talk about is like why each one fails, and that's okay.
right. I
So
mean,
like yeah,
oh,
what are those problems or
I guess I would say like okay, if the goal is purely to just increase the absolute numbers of African Americans who get degrees, I mean, I guess it would be the option. I don't know. I mean, in that case, actually, I'm not even sure what the right answer would be. But I think the criticism is like we also want to value other things. Like we have to balance other things we want as well.
Mhm.
So it's like we could randomly advantage like a particular segment of the population in order to achieve a goal, and we could be successful at it.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like there are other things that we value as well, and
Yeah.
we might sacrifice those values in order to do it.
So yeah,
I realize I haven't
that's a
given my answer
great
yet, but
you yeah, you really walked all the way around that one. So what's like the what is the thing that you're not able to sacrifice in each one? This is the weird thing about this, right? There's something
mm,
strange here.
I guess the thing is like you're benefiting people who already have like some kind of benefit. I mean, I guess it's like if your parents go to university, like maybe you've got a better chance of being like middle class.
Totally, right? There's this
Yeah.
like built-in there's a built-in assumption there, right? That you're
Hmm.
not benefiting the people who most need it.
Hmm.
We're kind of assuming socially that people whose parents went to university already have this advantage, and therefore you're not actually aiding the people who you're
Right.
trying to reach, right? So
Yeah.
there's the idea of what we identify as the Black Americans in need, right? The ones who are the 65% who don't attend university. It doesn't seem to help them. There's
Mm.
something, there's like a, this was kind of set up as a like a class reductionist idea, right?
Hmm.
Where
Hmm.
when we talk about these identity politics separate from a class dimension, right? We're trying to
Yeah.
overcome a class problem. This is really talking about a class problem that's also racially coded. It's really class
Yeah.
that we're talking about here. And but this other identity, the one that we seem to want to choose, kind of like it doesn't match up the way we want it to.
Mm.
But again, like there's no right answer here. There's something
Mm.
strange, but it's in this notion of how we socially construct this identity. So don't worry, Nathan. You're doing fine as long as you pick an answer. You just got to say one or the other. Tell us your assumptions, your reasons, your logic, your goal, what you think the outcome will be, and why.
Yeah.
So we can move on to question number
Okay.
two.
Right. So
This one,
we're not here all
this
day.
one,
I'm
this
gonna.
one is a I hope you're ready because this one is about women, Nathan.
Okay.
So we're going into a different fire now. Okay.
Right.
Number 2. If you were to choose a plan to help women from HPV, sexually transmitted disease, it does not respect condoms, has a bit much bigger impact on the health of women than men. Which policy would you choose and why?
Okay.
Number 1, mandatory free vaccination for all
Right.
girls in private high schools. Or
Hmm.
2, mandatory free vaccination for all boys in public high school. And why? So we
So
can vaccinate all the girls in private schools. We can
right.
vaccinate all the boys in public schools.
Right. Um. Okay. Hmm. Well, let me see. I mean, I think. I mean, I'm tempted to just say it's like it's a false choice, but I realize that that's the whole point.
Yes, because it is.
Uh,
Yeah,
well, I'm tempted. Okay, okay. I'm tempted to say vaccinate. Okay, so they're both in high school, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm tempted to say boys because probably boys in public school is a bigger number than girls in private school.
hmm
That
But
would be my
we're
thinking.
worried about the women, Nathan. Why
That's
would you
that's true,
vaccinate boys if we're worried about women?
but but boys can transmit it. I mean, not boy. I mean, but men can transmit it. I guess once they get older.
I guess. Yeah, we assume once they get married and they
Yes,
marry.
exactly.
But yeah, like
Yes.
all so this is this okay,
Yeah.
and this is another like
Mhm.
there's a critical blind spot in here. Like this we kind of get a sense like this is It's sexually transmitted. Boys have sex
Mhm.
with girls. That's how it gets transmitted. We're
Yeah.
assuming that they're like public school people only date people in public schools, right? This is it's built
Mm.
into it. We know that there's going to be more. There's going to be greater numbers, right? We assume that this is just going to it will in some way benefit more girls over time,
Yes, right.
um,
Yeah.
and more disadvantaged girls, right? There, it's public school. It's not a private school. Private schools they have the means to do it.
Yeah.
Here's something I didn't know until later. HPV can be transmitted through lesbian sex. So
Right.
women have sex with women, a woman has
Uh,
sex with another woman. HPV can pass that way.
mhm.
So I didn't even realize it when I made it. There's this blind spot of heterosexism
Right.
loaded into it.
Right.
How do you transmit a sexually transmitted disease? Boys give it to girls, girls give it to
Mhm.
boys, right? It,
Mhm.
total blind spot, right? In if you're not the person making the decision, if you're not
Mhm.
someone who knows that and you're not involved in the decision making, you're not going to get it. Okay, one more. This one has a few follow-ups,
Yeah.
Nathan, but this one is important and
Okay.
I think it'll be easier
Okay.
because it's
Okay. I hope so.
not this one
Those
is
were good ones.
about
Yes.
finally we're getting to how this impacts atheism.
Right.
But
Okay.
the same thing, right? We want to think about the assumptions, the goals, the outcome, this
Mhm.
idea of the collective good. Okay, you, Nathan Alexander, are to
Okay.
choose a plan to implement government policies through private nonprofits, meaning
Right.
this is going to be an NGO. The government gives
Yeah.
money to nonprofits, and
Mhm.
they do the work of sheltering the homeless, establishing foster families, setting up adoption,
Mm.
drug recovery programs, adult education,
Right. Okay.
all of
Right.
these social goods. They actually provide them. Which one do you choose and why? Okay, number one, only distribute tax dollars to secular organizations which would be
Mm.
free to discriminate in any way they choose. So it's
Right.
secular organizations.
Right.
Or only distribute tax dollars to religious organizations. They
Mm.
need to follow anti discrimination laws. Which do you choose?
So it's only to religious organizations.
Yes, but the religious
Okay.
organizations need to follow anti discrimination
Right.
laws.
Okay.
Hmm.
These are good thought experiments.
I'm
Hmm.
glad you like them.
Yeah.
Right, and this one, I think this one speaks a little more to what we were
Yes.
trying to get to.
Yeah, I think so. Hmm.
Well, what's
Yeah.
important to you in
Yeah.
this? Is it more important that secular organizations get money, or is it more important that groups not discriminate with social goods?
Yeah. I'm inclined to go with the second, with the non-discrimination one. I
Why?
mean,
Why is that the important one?
I think it's because I think it's if they're abiding by the like if they're abiding by the laws and they're not discriminating against anyone, then maybe their religion doesn't really factor into it.
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it might
No,
in
that
like a more subtle way.
right. Okay, so and this I
That's sort of my thinking. Yeah.
right, and
Do
so
you?
yeah, this I think that gets to the point of what's more important for us, right? Is
Yeah. Well,
non-discrimination.
do you have? Let me turn the tables on you. Like, do you have the
Yeah.
same view about that intuition?
Well, the reason I made it this way is because that's the thing that I would choose on balance, right? Is non-discrimination.
Hmm.
That's the
Hmm.
problem to be avoided. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if we follow it, if we let's start to change the rules a little bit or change the situation. Imagine we can do it to give money to secular or religious groups. Government's going to do it, whichever one offers the best contract or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the government's going to say, okay, well, yeah, just give them the money. Which group do you think would is more likely to discriminate if the government
Oh.
didn't have these laws?
Oh, I think the religious would definitely.
Yeah, why?
Because, well, I think that's just how history is sort of, and like the present day has shown that. I mean, not to say obviously that all religious people discriminate, but I think in general, religions are more discriminatory, I guess, towards minorities and women and so on.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and this is, of course, to bring it to a real world case. I think this is
Hmm.
going to go before the Supreme Court in the United States later
Yeah.
this year. It was about foster families in Philadelphia taking state money but rejecting homosexual couples,
Right.
married
Right.
couples, and saying,
Hmm.
"Well, we're not going to give them children because they're gay." which is against anti-discrimination laws, but they're trying to cut out and say, like, well, we can't be forced to do things against our religion.
Mhm.
But Nathan, do you see what just happened? What you just went to? It suddenly became an identity issue, right? This group is better because it behaves in this way, and we need to give money to these groups, not these groups, because it gives
Mhm.
our outcome, right? What we've
Yeah.
said as atheists is that what
Mhm.
we want is a system that does not discriminate. It's
Yeah.
less about
Right.
who does it, it's more about the non-discrimination because that's the collective good.
Yeah.
But
So that
but
yeah.
yeah.
But that means we've chosen the non-identity politics option, or
No, it is identity politics.
I see. So,
The
but oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the notion of non-discrimination as a positive social collective good is part of our identity. It's part of our group goals. Like you were saying at the beginning, right? If we
Mhm.
have, think about minority religions would probably be more accepting of a wall between church and state because they'd
Yeah.
be less likely to face discrimination.
Right.
Whereas if we turn it around and you think about like a Catholic family services group, of course they're
Mhm.
not going to offer abortion counseling. They're not going to tell women to get abortions.
Right.
It
Right.
goes against their worldview.
Mhm.
And their worldview says like, oh, a world without abortion is a collective good. That's the social good we need.
Right.
So
Yes.
even what we think of as these collective goods are shaped by our identity.
Oh,
Crazy,
yeah,
right?
I see what you mean. That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
it's weird, right?
yeah.
It's super weird because we think of these things as universals when we think about what
Mhm.
is meant by the general will or collective good, but they're
Yeah.
not. They're part of what we think of. So here,
And
okay, one more follow up,
but
Nathan.
okay.
One more follow up. Who actually makes the policy decisions to say which group is going to be given money?
Oh, like in terms of like whether it's like a democratically elected
Yeah, yeah, or
body or
in
something.
the context of the United States.
Hmm. I
Well,
mean,
I'll tell you who does it, Nathan, and it's going to blow your mind. It's Congress.
right,
It's
yes,
groups like the Senate, and the Senate is 99%
right,
religious, which
yes.
brings us back to the other part of identity politics, which is shouldn't we have more atheists, more nuns at the very least,
Hmm.
people who are saying I don't have a religious openly saying I don't have a
Hmm.
religious affiliation,
Hmm.
to make these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point. But I think there's like a difference because one could say I want the democratic body to be pretty much proportional to the gender and race and religion and
Mm.
so on, or to say that's one way, and then another way is to say like I wish it as an atheist, I wish it was all atheists who are there. I mean,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
think that. I'm just saying.
Yep.
So I mean, it's like I don't. I guess that's where I might want to kind of push back maybe a little bit on whether that's actually identity politics, because what identity exactly of mine is it that's saying I think we shouldn't discriminate against people? I mean, like, can you sort of single out like which aspect of my identity that is, if that makes sense?
Well, for the sake of this discussion, we're
Mm,
putting everything into your identity as an atheist and
okay.
or a nun. Let's go with none.
Right. Okay.
And this is something that we're seeing. We still part of the project that we're undertaking here is that we're moving on beyond just this point where okay, God isn't real. We reject religion. We don't think it's true. It's not for us. We're not going to
Hmm.
attend a church.
Yeah.
Where does that leave me and the people who feel like this? And we're still forming that identity, right? For who we are, trying to figure out who we actually are. And some of the things we know we're not running guns to African warlords, right? We're not um, Lashif. Um,
Yes, atheist. Yeah.
right? We're not.
Right.
That's not. We're not
Right.
these evil people who kick
Hmm.
puppies and
Hmm.
drink blood. We're not the people that QAnon describes. but we're trying to figure out like exactly where we are. And we know one of the things is like I mean like abortion is definitely a stance that seems very very consistent across all non-believers.
Hmm.
So either I don't want to say pro-abortion, pro-choice, right?
Right. Yeah.
That seems to be part of that identity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like we discussed in the earlier, pretty far left on the spectrum. It seems to be very progressive.
Hmm.
Um, but we don't know. That's something that can very easily be undone if all the people in charge of political decisions are, evangelical Christians who believe that we need to support Israel.
Hmm.
That way, they build the third temple and Christ can return to Earth.
Hmm.
Right? That's that. I mean, that's part to them. That's a good.
Right. Yeah.
So there is this question of how this fits together.
Yeah.
Um, but you bring up two good solutions that I
Hmm.
think are worth considering, and I have a third. Because
Okay.
the first one you said was, okay, if it's in proportion, right?
Right.
If we have a Senate that's like, I don't know, what is it, like 30% minorities, a Senate
Hmm.
that's 50% women,
Yeah.
a Senate that's 10% left handed people,
Yeah.
and 22% nuns,
Hmm.
people with no religion, then things will work out, right? We'll get the feedback, we get this consensus building, we'll get this understanding. Everybody has a voice.
Hmm.
We're able to solve these questions that as an individual we can't, right? Free university for all black Americans whose parents attended university, or free university for all Americans whose parents did not. We can work together and find a solution.
Hmm.
Um, or we can just say, you know what? No, we're just going to fill it with nuns, fill the Senate with nuns, and everything we do is the
Yeah.
right choice,
Yeah. Right.
right? I think there's a third, and I
Okay.
think left-handedness kind of describes this,
Okay.
right? Because it's
Right.
kind
Okay.
of random, right? 13, it's
Mm.
10%, you get 13%. Like the reason it's random, it looks random, it kind of matches, is because it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Like nobody cares. It doesn't affect.
That's
It's not.
true. Yeah. That's true.
Left-handedness isn't a class issue. It's not a race
Mm.
issue. It's not religion or gender or sexuality or
Hmm. Hmm.
trans.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter. But
Hmm.
atheism does have an effect for some reason,
Yeah.
and
That's
there
true.
is a
Yeah.
bias.
Yeah.
So that has to be overcome, and that's something I'm not. I don't know how to do it. One thing I'm certain of is that there are definitely more irreligious people in the Senate than they admit to. Right? I'm
Yeah. That's true.
pretty sure,
Yeah. I think so. I think
because
so.
that's just not possible. And I mean, it's the same with like we know there's plenty of closeted homosexuals there.
Mm.
I say plenty like it's a big party and like that we're not invited to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean, like to make religion, and I guess would you say like gender and race and so on, to make them just eventually they'll be like left-handedness where people don't doesn't really matter to anyone and no one pays attention, what race or gender like the makeup of the body is.
Well, okay, here's the left-handedness one is sort of like it's kind of built that way, and I think there are biases, but I won't get into that here. The other example I
Mm.
thought of is if we go back to 1850 in the United States,
Yeah.
get in the time machine,
Uh-huh.
and go back, the central conflict at the time is between slavers and
Hmm.
abolitionists. And this is an
Right.
identity issue. Like the number of people who own slaves is pretty small. The
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
people who are abolitionists who see slaves on a daily basis is incredibly small, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that it's their moral world outlook. It shapes who they are. It shapes their behavior. It shapes their voting. It shapes how they act. It's a total identity thing. You come back to 2020, we don't have slavers and
Right.
abolitionists,
No.
right?
No.
And the reason we don't is because it's like we restructured the political economy, the laws,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
society to make
Hmm.
it so that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you
That's true.
can do that to, and there are attempts to do it with gender, their attempts every
Mhm.
day with sexuality and race. It's a
Mhm.
constant struggle of overcoming, and it can be done through with atheism or nuns, people who,
Mhm.
if we know exactly what it is that we're looking for, I suspect it's going to be something about a strong separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's made strong enough, it won't matter.
That's true. You
Yeah.
know, like, I sort of think in Canada, like, I think that Justin Trudeau is I think he's Catholic, but, I mean, it's interesting because it's, like because I really don't know what the leaders of the main parties, like, what their religion is. I mean, I
Yeah.
assume that the conservative guy is Christian of some persuasion,
Mm.
and I know that the leader of, the NDP, which is kinda like the left-wing party, he's a
Yeah.
Sikh.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
so, I mean, that's sort of apparent, I suppose, because, like, he wears a turban and things like that. But otherwise, like, it's not it's I mean, I guess it's like maybe Canada is like somewhat approaching that where it's not really something many people think about. I mean, obviously we're not like totally secular yet, but
Mm.
it does matter maybe less in the I don't know. I'm not sure exactly, but
Right? Yeah, I mean, has there been? I mean, like it's in the U.S. right now. I mean, we're trying to undo all the Trump
mm,
stuff, where he
mhm, mhm,
literally, like, handed power. I mean, had conservative evangelicals choosing the Supreme Court
mhm.
justices, writing religious liberty laws. It still matters a big deal. Have there been? What have the gains been for atheists in Canada in the past 20 years or 4 years?
Um, I really don't know. I mean, it's it's funny
Like,
because I think there's always going to be like gains that atheists sort of make towards coming up with a more secular state,
mm,
but I think there are smaller battles. I think
yeah.
than maybe in the U.S.
I do. I can think of something where Canada really let everybody down. You
Okay.
went and changed the national anthem, got rid of sons, which
Uh-huh.
is gendered,
Yes. Right.
and changed it to us.
Yes.
But you still ask God to keep your land free,
Right. Yeah.
glorious and free. Even
That's true.
can't
Yeah.
secular society my ass. You guys are slacking.
That's true. And also in Ontario, which is my province, like we have
Oh,
state
oh,
like
slipping. Now we know.
provincial funded. Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah.
We've got provincially funded Catholic schools, and
Ooh.
and otherwise we don't fund religious schools.
Mm,
But like there's just sort of a quirk in the constitution that Ontario funds Catholic schools. So it's sort of unusual. Like we have a total secular system, but then we just have these Catholic schools that are also publicly funded.
right.
That's something I guess. And there's always like talk about getting rid of that, but it's not. I mean, I guess
Right.
I would like to see it removed, but
Yeah.
it's
But
not super
it's
pressing, I guess.
not super pressing. Further down the pipe,
Yeah.
mostly secular, and I think that's where and kind of how you end up with something. I mean, it's got to be both of these at the same time, right? You need more people coming out saying they are nuns,
Mm,
more people going for office to actually get that political power, get that public recognition,
yeah.
while at the same time you're getting to a position where you have these policies that make it okay to be that.
Hmm.
That where I mean, I recently was going through Biden's cabinet, looking,
Hmm.
trying to like kind of balance, figure out who's doing what, and there were a lot of people where nobody really knows their religion.
Ah, right.
It's just not publicly known. And then you read their policies and like their positions. It's like, well, they seem like a good person. This seems
Yeah.
great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, as a nun, that's really the ideal, where you don't,
Yeah.
you
That's
kind
true.
of just, you dissolve that aspect of your identity because it just doesn't matter anymore.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
not going to impose your religious ideology on someone. You're not going to have to follow someone else's religious ideology.
Hmm.
And it's not a government imposition.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. It's not
Right.
like yeah, I guess it's not like you're looking at the cabinet and thinking like, "Oh, look at all like these left-handed people, like they're gonna
Right.
what
Yeah.
are they gonna do now?" You
Oh my God, how dare they? Don't they know?
know?
God, think about what they do
Yeah.
in the bathroom. Uh, yeah, terrible. They don't know how to open doors or use
Yeah,
calculators. They smudge their hand whenever they write anything.
yeah. Are you are you left-handed, by the way? I
Yes, I am.
okay. I
Yeah,
for some reason I had that. I had that. I must have known that at some point.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really weird because it's something that I notice all the time. As soon
Right.
like I in at universities, I always actually anytime I was teaching, I always made a mental note of how many of my students were left-handed.
Oh, right.
Always works out to about 1 in 10 overall.
Right. Right.
In huge lecture halls, counting like you can see the kids who are
Mhm.
struggling.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Because yeah.
it's and so if you're left-handed, it makes a big difference. And there are things
Mhm.
that you notice right away, like which desk can I use, and
Yeah, that's
where
true.
can I sit? How do I use this thing? Right? It's
Yeah, that's
lots
true.
of issues like that. And I always notice when someone is left-handed,
Mm.
whereas I notice right-handed people never notice. Doesn't
Right.
matter. Doesn't matter. Nobody gives a
So,
shit. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um,
But it's a totally random thing, and
mhm.
it doesn't have sort of like class position or policy
Right.
implication
No,
because of
no,
it.
no.
Yeah,
Another thing, I mean, we should probably wrap up soon, but like
yeah,
I guess something we really haven't talked about much, or it's sort of been hovering around, is like the whole issue of class, which is it's another important identity factor. I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
that's a fairly safe
yeah.
statement, I guess.
Pretty big one. Might
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that one might carry some weight.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, the bigger things though is we are still working out what it means to be an atheist. If you look at historically where atheists stood, what was sort of imposed upon them, because a lot of our identity, whether we like it or not, and this is something that most it gets glossed over in a lot of identity politics, is that it's very often socially constructed. We
Hmm.
like to think that we make our own identity and project it onto the
Right.
world,
Right.
but a lot of the times it's projected onto us. And
Hmm.
and certainly with atheism, like this idea that okay, he doesn't believe in God. The most
Hmm.
important thing we need to know about this guy is does he
Hmm.
believe in God?
Hmm.
No, he's the villain. He's not
Yes.
trustworthy.
Right.
He can't sign a contract.
Hmm.
He's not going to be able to testify in court. Things like that. He'll
I
never put
mean,
his hand on a Bible. You
right.
know, yeah. It goes back to I think John Locke. You know,
Yeah.
you can
Or
tolerate
yeah, maybe
any
even before that,
religion
but
because
yeah.
they all have God in their heart, except those
Hmm.
atheists. You
Hmm.
can't trust
Hmm.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Don't tolerate them.
Hmm.
That whereas we don't see that about atheism,
Hmm.
we can't begin to imagine. I mean, we can't. We literally can't understand how the world perceives us, and that's something that has to be addressed. And I mean, thankfully, we know um, there are places that are sort of doing this from all those different angles. I mean, politically, we know about the Center for Free Thought Equality.
Uh-huh.
It's cfequality.org. They track state, local, national reps
Hmm.
who are non-atheist and agnostic,
Hmm.
kind of seeking them out. And we know that, and this is, I mean, one for when we start learning this stuff, secular Democrats caucus inside the Democratic Party. A lot of
Hmm.
them are, I think some of them are office holders. They have policy prescription that's based around secular demands, right? This
Right.
is what we want, what we need for ourselves. This is what we think the world should be like. In more identitarian aspect is there's Republican atheists, which seems a little contradictory, but if that's
Hmm.
your jam,
Hmm.
check it out because they are more about like just they exist, right? Like
Yeah.
20% of the population, they're there, they're in the party, they're overlooked and they're marginalized.
Hmm.
They want to be recognized and seen first and foremost.
Yeah.
So there are those like that aspect of identity politics, right? This is who we
Hmm.
are. This is what we are. We exist. You have to deal with us. All the way up to like we have a worldview, and we fit into it in this way. We belong
Hmm.
here.
Hmm.
Come on,
Yeah.
guys.
On the point about like the Democrat, like the atheist or non-religious Republicans, like
These are specifically atheists, Republican
okay,
atheists.
atheist, okay,
Yeah.
but well, here here's my thought experiment for you, which I mean, it's not really much of a thought experiment, but like if you would rather have the, yeah, in your district or whatever, like an
Yeah.
atheist Republican or a Christian Democrat, like who would you rather have representing you in say in the House of Representatives?
Yeah, like, whoa, whoa. Of course, it's going to be it'd be the Democrat, but
Right.
it's like this is yeah. You're jumping pretty far ahead because I'm pretty sure if you look at our like previous presidents, we
Yeah.
know one of them went to church all the time, and one of them didn't go to church all the time,
Uh-huh.
and they had very very different policies, and it doesn't work out the way that we would like to
Yeah.
imagine, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, part of our identity that just because you're an atheist doesn't make you
Yeah.
good.
Right.
That would be another discussion, Nathan. Maybe next time. You
Yes.
wanna do that one next time?
Yeah, we could talk about that.
Tell us where this goes. All right. Anything else we need to pump up? You wait a minute. You wrote a book, didn't you? What was the book that you've written?
The book. Yeah, I guess I can might as well plug my book. It's
Please, all
called
day.
Race in a Godless World: Atheism, Race, and Civilization, 1850 to 1914. And it
And
was
you're
published.
on Twitter. I hear.
Yes. Yeah, I should. Yeah, I'm
Are
on
you on
Twitter.
Instagram?
No. Well, let me give my Twitter handle.
Okay.
Yeah, you're messing up the whole plug. Uh, it's at Nath Nathg Alexander. So you can find me on Twitter there. And another thing we had to plug is this secular communities survey, which
Mm.
basically we're not affiliated with it or anything, but it's run by or it's organized by a team at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and they're looking for people who are members of a secular community in the U.S. to be part of their survey. I'll put the link in the description, and then like if you are a member of a secular community in the U.S., then click the link, and I think you can sign up to be part of the survey.
Yeah, that's going to be some great work and start to answer the questions that we have outstanding about like who we are and what we want
Mhm.
in our move beyond atheism.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's like it's important to sort of, yeah, to know about these people, like the non-religious people who like know different stuff about them. So I think like filling in these kind of surveys is pretty important.
yeah, and they've done other surveys in the past that have been pretty remarkable, and it's stuff that I think we've alluded to and we've drawn from
Hmm.
um,
Yes.
in the past two episodes. Yeah, and I am not on Twitter, so if you have a
Hmm.
problem with
Right.
anything I said, it's Nath
Right.
Alexander at Twitter, and I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe I'll
you
put
should.
this on Facebook. Do people use Facebook anymore?
I I still also use Facebook, although I suppose like I shouldn't advertise that. Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
and all right, then we'll also use the Facebook. Eventually, it'll show up
yeah.
there. All right, fantastic.
Okay.
That was great, Nathan.
All right. Yeah,
I
that was
feel
a lot of fun.
renewed. All right, and
Yes.
all the questions were answered. All right,
Yeah,
everybody.
we've
Now, yeah,
almost solved every problem now, I
two for
think.
two, baby. Let's
Yeah.
keep it going.
Right.
This is awesome.
All right. Okay,
All right,
so we'll see everyone next time.